Hey, F50 Women, thank you so much for joining us. Today, we are here with Nancy McKay. She is an author. She is a speaker. She is a recovery and resilience expert. And she has an inspiring story of recovery and creating a new life after cancer. Nancy, welcome and thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much, Julia. I appreciate the opportunity to be here with you today.
Yes. So help us to get to know you a little bit from how you started. So as a younger woman or younger girl, tell us about who you were, what you wanted to do, who you wanted to be, what you loved. Let us get to know who you were.
Well, when I was a younger woman in my teens, I was self-conscious. I was a people pleaser. I did what I was told. I was a rule follower. I didn't like getting in trouble. And when I discovered alcohol in high school, that helped me feel more comfortable in my own skin. It made me feel like I was a part of instead of on the outside looking in. It wasn't until really recently that I started loving myself and, really have come into my own after the age of 60.
Wow. I love to hear that story. We love to hear how that happened. But before we get to that meaty middle stuff, tell us about you now. Tell us about what you do and who you are.
Okay. Well, now I'm a recovering alcoholic. Mm-hmm. I'm a ovarian cancer survivor. I'm looking at, it'll be 7 years. Is that right? 7 years. 2015, I was diagnosed. So yeah, 7 years.
Wow.
In February. And I am now a certified life and EQU coach. And I'm in training again to become a master facilitator of EQU coaching. So I will be able to run retreats and workshops without adult supervision.
Okay. So be the grown-up of this.
Yeah, I get to be the grown-up in the group.
Yeah.
I'm very excited about that.
Nice. So explain what EQU coaching is. I've never heard about that before. What is that?
EQU coaching is using horses as co-facilitators in life coaching. It's not therapy. It's not any kind of physical therapy. There's no riding involved. It's all groundwork. The reason why horses are so wonderful as co-facilitators is because they're so intuitive. They pick up on all the energy around them. Horses are herd animals, so they like to join up with other horses, obviously, but other sources of energy that are trustworthy. When I have a client in the round pen, the horse will mirror the energy that the client is putting off. If the client is incongruent in their energy, so if they are pretending to be one thing but internally they feel completely different, then the horse can sense that incongruity, which is astounding. And they'll steer clear of the person in the round pen whose energy isn't lined up. As soon as the client lands on their truth, they don't even have to speak the words, their body relaxes. And then they're in alignment. And the horse picks up on that. Then the horse wants to join up. So here comes the horse, and it's just, I say it's magic because that's what it feels like to me whenever someone relaxes into their truth and the horse mirrors that back to them by coming and joining up with them. It's just magic. It's incredible. I had to learn how to do this so that I could bring it to my clients.
It is wonderful. As you talk about the magic, I try to explain to people that was part of my journey where somehow who I was trying to be or thought I should be wasn't in line with who I naturally was.
Right.
And I feel like that was just flatlining everything in my life.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so that's confirmation that people can sense it.
Absolutely. People can sense it and have a lot more intuition than they probably think they do.
Yeah.
But horses have
even
so much more than humans do even. That's the beauty of it. When the horse picks up on it, then you feel it in a visceral way. Your body feels it. It really cements that, oh, this is where I need to be, sort of thing.
Now, have you had any clients fight that truth? Thinking even when the horses react or whatever evidence they get, that they're just like, no, I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I've had a couple who the horses haven't responded, but not like with most everybody.
Okay.
And it's interesting because it really is a testament to working with people who are really aligned with what they're doing, and I'm going to backtrack on that, because the people who are really aligned and don't really have a whole lot to talk about in a coaching session, the horse should be right there. I've had a couple people who were, I thought pretty aligned with what was happening in their lives and so on and so forth, and seemed to be living in their truth. And yet the horse was engaging a little bit, but not as much as I would have expected. Horses are great lie detectors. If the horse is on the other side of the round pen and they think they're sitting in their truth, I can call bullshit on that. Something tells me there's something underneath there that's not lining up.
And sometimes is it just buried so they don't even know?
I think so. And sometimes they just don't want to even go there.
Right. I can imagine. Yeah.
And if that's the case, then it's like, okay, well, why did you make the appointment?
Yeah. Why are you here? Why did you call me? Yeah. So tell us, because you went from a younger woman and you discovered alcohol and opened you up in a way, and then you became a older woman, you found yourself after 60. Tell us about what happened in the middle to get you there. Help us.
Lots of stuff. So my drinking went from fun social drinking in my late teens, 20s, 30s. Into my 40s, it got a little more significant. I started being concerned about my drinking. I was thinking, I'm not sure that this is the right way for me to be living. So I'd pick up books at the bookstore, making sure nobody saw me in the alcohol recovery section. I was very ashamed of it, ashamed of not being able to handle it or thinking that I wasn't handling it. Right. So I tippy-toed around that all through my 40s. And when I was 50, my father committed suicide. He was an alcoholic. I was his dutiful daughter and loved him. And I was with him a lot of the time. And he had been, he was an alcoholic always, in my growing up years and so on and so forth. And he had gotten sober in 1995, just before my mother died, and stayed sober for a few years, and then started kind of bouncing around the recovery world, in and out sort of thing. And so finally in 2007, he killed himself, and that threw my drinking into overdrive. I just felt so guilty, even though now looking back, had nothing to feel guilty about. It was his disease, his path, but it really threw me, and I started drinking very heavily. It took me 2 years to get to that point of suicide attempt on my part.
Wow.
Okay. And so, my husband and I had gone to happy hour with some friends and came home, and on the way, or when we got home, I said to my husband, damn it, should have stopped and gotten a bottle of wine on the way home. And he said, well, I think you've had enough. Those 5 little words just threw me into a tailspin. And I got mad and went in the bedroom and slammed the door. And then I started having a huge pity party for myself. And that turned into melancholy, like you can't believe. And to the point where I thought, well, everyone would be better off without me, which was, in retrospect, a fairly common thought for me to think. But this time I took steps to take care of that. And so I got my husband's handgun out of the nightstand and put it to my head, and it wouldn't fire. I realized after a minute or so that the safety was on, lowered the gun to figure out how to take the safety off. And as soon as I did, the gun fired.
Oh my goodness.
Thankfully, it wasn't pointed at my head. The only thing that got shot was an innocent pillow on the bed. Yeah. That was it for me. I never drank another drop again. And that was 13 years ago, almost 13.
Okay. So tell us about that, because it seems almost like an inner trigger that said, okay, that's enough. Was it because it scared you sober? Okay.
Yeah, I can't drink safely because this is where my drinking takes me. And so I knew I couldn't drink safely anymore. And at that moment, I say I was standing at the intersection of desperation and grace. And
I love that.
I was so desperate, and God or the universe or whatever you believe in as a higher power saved me in that moment. It's a miracle that I'm still around. So that was then. And I went into recovery and worked my ass off there and got a great job about a year later, and everything was great. And then in 2015, I was diagnosed with ovarian cancer. Unfortunately, it was early stage, which is very rare with ovarian cancer.
I know that's a serious one.
The symptoms are so benign that you miss them. I was in the middle of menopause and I had lower back pain. I blamed it on the mattress. I was peeing a lot more frequently. I'm in menopause. These things happen. Everything I've had were symptoms of ovarian cancer. The problem with ovarian cancer is there's no test to detect it. It's not like, pap smear doesn't do it. So there's nothing that they can test. If there's a sense that there might be a problem, then there's a blood test that they can run that gives them a better indication. But until there's a biopsy, there's no definitive answer. I had my surgery on my 58th birthday. And so I woke up and found out that I had cancer. And I kind of joked that, well, that's one hell of a birthday present. As it turns out, that was the best birthday present because of that diagnosis and the treatment that I went through 6 rounds of chemo. My perspective on life began to change. My diagnosis wasn't terminal by any stretch of the imagination, but it was enough to bring my mortality right smack me in the face. I started thinking about, am I living my life the way I want to live it? I had a really good job with a really good company, and I enjoyed the people I worked with, and I was miserable. And so my mantra became, I didn't get sober and survive cancer to be miserable.
Yeah.
And I knew that I was the only one that could change that.
What did you do?
I started training to become a life coach. I dove headfirst into the self-development pool, and I started studying Brene Brown. I started reading everything I could get my hands on and came across Martha Beck and saw her at a retreat in California on my 61st birthday and came home and enrolled in her training program.
Okay.
And it's been fabulous ever since. I retired from my corporate job in 2019. I launched my business in 2018. I am doing work that feeds my soul, which is exactly what I wanted. That's why I left my other job, because it did not feed my soul. And I wasn't going to tolerate it. I couldn't, that's not living. That's existing. I'm not here to exist. I'm here to live and thrive.
So why did you pick life coaching? What made you choose that or go to that?
It's really interesting because when I went to college, which didn't last very long, I was in college for a semester before I quit and got married to a man who asked me to marry him after I'd only known him for 2 weeks. That indicates how that self-confidence and self-worth was at the time, because I thought he was the only guy that would ever ask me to marry him. I said yes. That's very illustrative of how I thought about myself. At that time, I was also going to major in psychology and minor in social work. I always knew that helping people was something that I wanted to do.
Okay.
And throughout my life, I'm the person that a lot of people came to when they had problems. Can you, help me with this? What am I doing? Blah, blah. It's like, I could have hung up a shit.
Yeah. You and I are.
The doctor is in, right? It just felt really natural. I started following some life coaches, and I loved Martha Beck and her message. She was just the obvious choice to train with.
You mentioned that at that time with the man that asked you to marry him after 2 weeks, that's how you thought about yourself. Tell us about how you think about yourself now.
Now I have a lot of self-confidence. I don't have as much as I will have, I'm sure, by the time I'm 10 toes up, but it's significant just how much I've gotten in this last year, how much I've grown in that area. I'm reaching out and connecting with people who I never would have thought I'd have the nerve to reach out and connect with. I'm showing up and doing things because that's what I want to do, not because somebody says you should do this or you shouldn't do that. I don't listen to the negative voices in my head anymore. Let's back up on that. There are negative voices in my head. Never go away. Always be there, but I don't have to act on them. And I can act in my own best interest now, and I have my own back. Okay. And that's the difference. I used to really need validation from the outside world that I was okay. I still like to have validation, but I don't need it. It's not essential for me anymore. It used to be essential.
So what did you do for those people who just don't know? So how do I get to that place that you're in? Is there any process you went through, or is there anything you do daily that gets you to get those voices to go away or not really care or need it?
Yeah, well, I got a lot of life coaching.
Okay.
Number one.
For yourself.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. When I started training to become a life coach, part of the process is being coached and allowing yourself to be vulnerable. That was huge for me. Those first dipping my toe into that and being vulnerable, somehow I knew instinctively that that was going to save my ass. Okay. You know, it was just that was going to make a difference for me. Okay. Instead of being ashamed or trying to hold my secrets in, I started letting them out and sharing them. And what I found was that helps other people, not only from hearing my story, but it helps them understand that it's safe to open up to. When I started working as a life coach, I hired my own life coach to help me because everybody's got blind spots and can learn something. As far as I'm concerned, I think everybody needs a life coach. Yeah. Everybody needs somebody that's objective, that they can bounce things off of and get perspective on. One of the things that Martha Beck says, and I repeat it frequently, is I'm not going to be able to tell you anything about yourself that you don't already know. I'm just going to help you uncover it. We all have this inner wisdom that tells us what to do. We just have never, traditionally, we've never been trained how to tap into that. My parents didn't know anything about that, and they didn't teach me about it if they did. But I've had those moments of intuition that hit me, and I thought, no, I can't do that. I wouldn't listen. And, my life would be totally different if I had listened. And so in some ways, it's like, I wonder how it would have been. So like when this fellow asked me to marry him, I had every warning light going off, every warning bell in my body. It's like, run away, run away. And I thought, no, this is my one and only chance. I got to go there.
You argued with the voice.
Yes, I argued with the voice, and I got the hit a week before the wedding. Don't do it. Don't do it. And I did it. And 2 years later, I got divorced. So it's one of those things, if we know how to listen, and that's what I help people learn, is how to listen, how to tap into that intuition that they have.
Right. And the more we don't listen, it just gets dulled and dulled.
Yeah.
Almost like a friend trying to tell you something after a while.
Exactly.
That's great advice for those who are stuck. I don't care how old you are. There are a lot of women my age that are stuck, and we want to help you get unstuck because like you said, what was the phrase you said? Right. You never know when your 10 toes are going to be up.
Exactly right. I know I've been given a couple of life-saving gifts. I don't want to waste them. I really don't want to waste them. I may have 5 minutes or 15 years or 25 years, but I'm going to make the most of it. I want to be happy and have fun in my life. Yesterday, I had an Equus coaching workshop or an equine workshop, and it was so much fun. And I thought, this is exactly what you're supposed to be doing.
That's beautiful. That's how we're
Much
feeling.
fun. And it felt so normal and natural. It was great.
Wake up in the morning and say, yep, I'm here and I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. So on your journey, did you have anyone who helped you along the way with some of those hard times? Was it your husband, friends? Was it a nurse that said, yes, you can survive this? Tell us about those people.
I have some friends that I've had since high school that have, were really supportive. And one especially that has just been there for me through thick and thin. She was really concerned about me when I was drinking so heavily, wanted to say something and was afraid I'd tell her to go to hell. She kept her mouth shut, but didn't run away. I was very fortunate that I didn't burn bridges when I was drinking. I was really lucky. Some people in my life kind of faded away after I quit drinking because there wasn't that commonality anymore. That's unfortunate, but it's part of the process. My husband has been a rock throughout this whole thing. We met a long time ago, but we got together when I was 40-ish. We got married when I was 47, and I'm pushing 65 now. We've been together for a long time, and he has been a huge support and my caregiver through every surgery I've had, hip replacement, shoulder surgery, and my hysterectomy. And he's been my nurse through all of it. And so he's a huge source of support. Yeah. One of my chemo nurses was, one of the reasons I wasn't going to do chemo initially because I had seen what it had done to my mom, and chemo itself had killed one of my friends who had a recurrence of breast cancer. She was on her last round, had some kind of reaction to it, and 10 days later, she was dead. So I was hell-bent on saying, that is not me.
Not going to be me.
I'm not going down that road. And then that intuition said, that you're going to be fine. And I changed my mind on a dime. I listened.
You were listening now. Yeah.
And I didn't know that I was listening to my intuition, really. It just kicked in. I didn't fight it.
Right.
Because this was all before coach training.
Yeah.
I hadn't been enlightened yet, so to speak. But something said that, my inner voice said, you're going to be fine. And one of my other little things I like to say is I lost my hair, but I gained my inner strength. And that's what it felt like. The physical side effects, losing my hair, being tired, fatigue, all that stuff was part of the process of me learning who I am, that strength that I didn't know I had, and who I could be if I went all in on myself.
That's fantastic. It's surrender and vulnerability and flowering into your power. So
exactly
awesome.
Right. Yeah.
Now, if you met your younger self, what is the one piece of advice you would give her?
Probably listen to your inner voice, your inner wisdom. I think if there's anything we can do to help kids tap into that early, then our world would be a whole different place.
Yes, it would. And what does that feel like? So if you were to try to tell someone who doesn't, what does my inner voice sound like? What does it feel like? Can you describe what that's been when you've listened to it? Maybe looking back thinking, well, it's sort of that.
For me, when I had this guy asking me to marry him, I had this feeling in my gut. It was a gut feeling that something wasn't right. And it wasn't a fear like you're in danger, that sort of thing. It was just, there was something that said, this is not the right thing. And it kind of lasted for me for a couple days because he had driven me to college. So I was going to college out of town and he took me there and was there for the weekend. And I had this feeling about, okay, thanks ever so much. You can go now.
Right. Yes.
I wouldn't say it. I just kept stuffing that down and saying, no, this is your one chance. I had this physical feeling that was like, I'm ready for you to go. I can't explain it, but it was physical.
Yeah.
And I'd had that feeling a couple times in my life before that. So I'm 18 years old and I recognize that feeling, but I didn't act on it. One of the things that I help my clients with is really listening to their body. And we do this exercise called a body compass. And it's, thinking about something that was unpleasant and rating that on a scale of 1 to -10. And then thinking about something really pleasant and rating that on a scale of 1 to +10. And then you get a feeling of where your feelings lie. So then in the future, when something comes up, you ask, how does this feel on this scale? Our bodies have so much more wisdom than our brains do. Our brains will lie to us all day long, but our body always tells us the truth. You can't always depend on your brain, because my brain has certainly led me down the wrong path on numerous occasions. Body wisdom is huge.
So you're talking about body and brain wisdom. What about the emotions? It feels like the emotions tangle those two things up. Mm-hmm.
So one of the other tools I use is called the model. And that is something that I think is a pretty universal truth, that our thoughts create our reality.
Okay.
And so the circumstance in our life, whatever it is, for instance, take a cancer diagnosis, your thought could be, why me? What the hell did I do to,
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
right? And then if your thought is, why me? Then your thoughts create an emotion. So your emotion might be anger. And then your feelings drive your actions. So if you're angry, what are you going to do? Well, you're going to get pissy, right? You're going to be mad. You're going to yell at your spouse. You're going to yell at your kids. You're going to kick the dog and, all the things when you're mad. And then what's the result? Well, you're an angry, bitter woman.
Yeah.
Who's
angry, bitter, sick person. Yeah.
sick person, right?
Yeah.
But if you have the same circumstance and your thought is, why not me? Which is what mine was.
Okay.
I never thought, why me? I kind of went, well, yeah, why not? My mom had cancer, why not? I'm surprised it hadn't happened sooner, really. And so then my feeling was one of acceptance.
Okay.
And so when you feel acceptance, what are the actions that you take? Well, for me, it was, you just do the next thing. You do what needs to be done in order to take care of the cancer, right?
Yeah.
And then the results are, at least you've done something, you're taking action, and you are being cured.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Different thoughts, different emotions. And so our emotions are important if they're, the thing about feelings and emotions is they won't kill you. I encourage all my clients to really sit in their feelings, sit in the emotions, and let them move through you, because emotions will, if you let them run their course, they will run through you in about 90 seconds and you won't die. And then you can look at, okay, how do I want to feel? And what thoughts can I think in order to feel that way?
Yeah.
So if I want to feel calm or peaceful, what thoughts are going to help me feel that way? I'm safe
right this minute.
And so that helps foster that. And then you can act accordingly. So many people feel like, if I start crying, I'll never stop.
Yes.
I don't know how many times I've heard that. I can't let myself feel it.
Yeah.
Well, the resisting of the feeling is keeping it alive, and it grows. It grows because it's underneath the shadows and in the dirt, and it's just getting bigger and bigger until one day you just blow. If you would have just sat there in it and said, I am so angry, and allowed the anger to process through you, in a couple minutes, it's gone. It's not to say you're not going to still have some residual anger, but the strong, powerful emotion has passed through your body.
Yeah.
And then you can move on to the next action. How do I want to deal with this? Am I going to go punch a hole in the wall, or do something that's going to help the situation?
do what's beneficial. So now that you've gotten to this amazing place where you're living your purpose, what's next for you? What do you see forward?
That's the fun part. As I said, I'm in training to become a master facilitator, and I should be finished with my training by the end of September, which means that I will start planning soon for my first solo
retreat.
And I probably will have somebody come and do it with me. So, because it's so much more fun when you've got some friends with you to help you, but it'll be nice not to have to concern myself about making sure I've got another master facilitator there to make sure that everything goes according to plan. I'm so excited, and as I said, I'm pushing 65. So I'll be 65 in February, to be still learning and growing and looking at a whole new element of my business at that point is really exciting for me. It really is true. You're never too old to do something else. I saw on Facebook this morning, someone reminded us that Dan Rather started writing his articles or his blog or whatever it is that he does. And I've read them. I know that it's significant at the age of 90, right? So
there you go. Yes.
You really are never too old to do what it is that gives you joy.
Yes.
Whatever that is. And
we're never done until you get those 10 toes up.
That's right.
Not done. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. So tell us about the workshops that you're envisioning for the future. Will they be week-long workshops? Are they weekend workshops? And are some of these online? I noticed that you mentioned you work with people virtually as well with the horses. Yeah.
Well, I don't do virtual work with the horses, but I do virtual one-on-one coaching like this. The workshops and retreats are going to be, I am planning a retreat in February in Arizona for women who need to get some clarity. The other type of retreat or workshop that I do are going to be for women in recovery and women who are wanting to explore their relationship with alcohol, or women who have already stopped drinking and still feel that, something's not right sort of feeling. And there's just a little bit of, their recovery process has gotten stale and they need a little oomph. That's what I want to do, is provide that. It'll be a combination of day-long workshops, half-day workshops, weekend retreats, and multiple day retreats at ranges that are going to be unbelievable.
Question. Do you find working with women, especially in recovery, that they're more hesitant to get help? When you hear about gambling addiction, sexual addiction, and alcohol dependence, you think of men. But with women, working with men, do you feel like they're more hesitant or afraid to say that?
Yeah, I think they are, because I think women feel shame at a deeper degree than men do. And I don't know that, I don't have the statistics on that, but I'm sure men have their own difficulties with admitting that they have a problem when they're supposed to be the big, strong guy. But women have, and this was true for me, I was always accused of being too sensitive. And so somebody might say something that they think is just a casual remark and that doesn't mean anything, but that might be something that makes me drink, because it makes me feel less than. And then you drink because you're too sensitive, and then feel ashamed because once you started drinking, it was hard to stop. So then you wake up the next day feeling like shit, full of shame and guilt and regret and self-loathing. I've been there. I know how that feels. It's not about being too sensitive. It's about reacting to what other people say in an unhealthy way for you, understanding that the words coming out of the other person's mouth are their words.
Yeah.
And you're not responsible for them.
Right.
And you can set boundaries.
Yes.
You can say, damn, that doesn't feel good.
And it's not your fault or your responsibility for what came out of somebody else's mouth.
No.
Yeah.
So I think women have the special category, for women who are struggling there. And the alcohol companies don't do anything to help because they target women in their marketing. Yeah? They target women and they target young women who are mothers. How many times have you heard about it's mommy juice, or, the wine bottle that says, and I haven't been in a liquor store in 13 years. So it's hard for me to, but I see the ads, right? Yeah. And it's like, it's a pretty rosé, or, they really market to the women so that women think that it's cool and it's okay.
It's just wine.
It's just wine. It's just wine. And what it is it's grape juice with alcohol, with ethanol, and ethanol is used in rocket fuel. The fact of the matter is that we are being sold a bill of goods that is dangerous for a huge portion of the population. You can't drink an addictive substance without the probability of becoming addicted to it. Yeah. And some people are lucky enough not to become addicted, but some people, it kills them. And I've seen it. Our culture has become so numb to the consequences of alcohol. And alcohol is the only drug that people ask us why we're not consuming it, instead of being asked why we are. Nobody says, well, why aren't you shooting up heroin? How come you're not smoking marijuana every day?
Wow, that's when you put it in those terms.
Right? How come you're not popping Percodan every 6 hours? It's the same idea. It's legal and it's romanticized. Unless you're drinking a glass of champagne when you're celebrating, then you're not living life to the fullest.
You're hard to hang out with because
you don't drink. So we won't invite you because you won't, you're going to put a damper on the party. Right.
Yeah. You're going to be completely sober.
Right. And so then that's what keeps people drunk. That's what kept me drunk for a long time was I'll never have fun again. If I quit drinking, I will never have fun again. And that was the first thought the day after I tried to kill myself. I'll never have fun again. Oh, well, yeah, that was really fun. Putting a gun to my head. That was a great time.
Yeah, that's a real thing. So now what do I do? Now what do I do for fun? Going to the Christmas party. Now what?
Right. Yeah. And it's uncomfortable. And it's especially uncomfortable when you're trying to pretend like you're not drinking. So you slide up to the bar and say, can I just have some club soda? So that people don't know that you're not drinking, that's not vodka and soda, Right. And that's a bunch of bullshit because there's still this stigma around people who don't drink and around people who drink alcoholically. And that kept me drunk for a long time. The thinking of being labeled as an alcoholic. My passions are to shatter the stigma of alcoholism and addiction and to normalize not drinking.
That you're still cool.
And fortunately, now people are starting to talk about recovery more. That's the way we're supposed to be, is sober. We're not supposed to have to poison ourselves in order to have a good time.
In order to commune with others and feel comfortable in ourselves.
Yeah. And, certainly don't want to get on a soapbox about the demon alcohol, the demon rum, right? But it really doesn't do a whole lot of good for us. Yeah. And it can ruin our lives.
It can do a lot of hard things and affect the generations coming.
Yeah.
It can create cycles. So give us a couple of pieces of advice from your playbook. What is one book that you would advise all women to read?
Top of the list is probably Untamed by Glennon Doyle, Anything by Brene Brown, and Martha Beck. Those are my top 3 favorites as far as telling it like it is.
Okay.
And
why Untamed? What is about that book that you found valuable?
Glennon Doyle just writes from her heart. She's got a few books out, and this one was really, she got down to her the nuts and bolts of her truth. Anytime someone does that and really bears their soul, they earn my respect. I love to meet and have coffee with, and I've had the extreme honor and privilege to be coached by Martha Beck herself on stage in front of 100 people. So that was quite amazing to sit down with the three of them or just one of them one-on-one. I mean, it would be exquisite, just absolutely exquisite. Nice. Anything they write, I highly recommend.
Thank you. And what is one thing that you cannot miss doing every day?
Oh, gosh. I'm not great at routine. I will tell you the one thing that I can't miss doing is having warm lemon water first thing in the morning.
I heard that's amazing for you. Yeah.
And it may be amazing for us.
Yeah.
But I have to do it if I want to drink coffee.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay. Why?
That's my stomach up for success as far as coffee is concerned. Now today is a abnormality because I had my lemon water and my coffee and my stomach is revolting. That is one thing that I do every day. Now I try to journal. I try to meditate. I'm not good at either one of them on a steady, regular, consistent basis. And It's unfortunate because I recommend all of those things to my clients. It's kind of like physician, heal thyself. But those things are very, very beneficial. Writing a gratitude list. Yeah. First thing, really important. Last thing before you go to bed, really, really helpful. Meditation is extremely helpful. So many people I know do that on a regular basis. And they've told me the difference that it's made in their lives. And when I do it, I notice a difference. And for some reason, I let life get in the way. Yeah. And I think that's part of the human experience. We let life get in the way. And I'm guilty of it just as much as the next guy.
Everybody else. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for your wisdom, for showing us and teaching us some tools to get to where you are, and for inspiring us that no matter how old you get, you can turn it all around. You're not done yet. You have a purpose here on the planet. It is your responsibility and your joy to find it.
Absolutely right. Thank you so much, Julia.
I'm excited to hear about what you have next. Please send me the retreat. I know there's one in February. Send them to me. I will share them with everybody because I think it's so important for you to shake off the noise. And,
thank you.
Just please help us. So
thank you so much.
It was amazing to meet you, Nancy, and I look forward to you in the future.
Thank you so much.